As you guys know, there is a continuing resolution bill that is supposed to fund the federal government. And the Republicans have whipped up votes for it and passed through the House, and it actually landed in the Senate. Now, in the Senate, the Republican Party needs 60 votes to have a filibuster-proof majority. But because the Democrats initially had claimed that they were not going to vote for this, and they were not going to vote for cloture, that this bill was not going to be able to avoid a filibuster. It was not going to pass. And then if the bill didn't pass, then there could be a potential shutdown of the federal government. If there was a shutdown of the federal government, obviously the Republican Party would have to come back to the table and negotiate with the Democrats. This is what the minority party does. So this is super basic, bare minimum politics, okay? Super basic, bare minimum politics. The minority party is supposed to use any and every advantage that they have, any and every instance that they have where they have a seat at the table, where they have a voice in the process, to stop the most dangerous aspects, the most nefarious aspects of the agenda of the administration. And the Democrats said that they were going to do this in the Senate. The Democrats, as a majority with the exception of one person, the Democrats in the House all voted against this bill. Now, you might say it's because they were powerless, because the House was going to pass, the House of Representatives was going to pass this bill, whether or not any Democrats said yes or no. So many of them could stand courageously and vote against it. But the reality is there are plenty of Democrats, even in Trump districts, that won Trump districts, that have re-elections coming up in the House of Representatives, that also unironically voted against this. The reason why they did so is because they, at least, it seems to me, understood the assignment a little bit better than the likes of Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand and numerous other high-profile Democrats in the Senate who are terrified of a government shutdown and its potential implications for the market. Chuck Schumer is the minority leader in the Senate. He's the leader of the Democratic Party in the Senate. And he has, after saying that he was going to not push this bill through, he turned around and basically said, actually, we are going to pass this. If you want to vote yes on this, if you want to vote for yes on the cloture, then you can. Now, the problem here is twofold. If the Democrats pass this supposedly clean continued resolution, a clean continued resolution, for those of you who don't know, is a continuing resolution that basically has the same standard of spending from the previous, the previously ordained, previously assigned expenditure bills, right? This is not a clean one, though, because it actually has a bunch of funding taken out of it, a bunch of funding for federal agencies taken out of this bill. The Republicans are using this as an opportunity to advance their agenda of dismantling the federal government. So ironically enough, the situation here is win-win for the Republicans if they want to destroy the federal government. If the bill goes through, they get to continue undermining the federal government through the funding apparatus, and now Congress is basically giving them the opportunity to do so. If they actually don't do this and they can't pass the continuing resolution, then if they can't pass it, then the government goes into shutdown, and effectively during that shutdown, they can take advantage of that and only keep certain government offices open. This is the argument that Chuck Schumer tried to falsely present as a damned if you do, damned if you don't, which is why we're voting for it. A lot of people, including unions that are responsible for federal agents and federal government employees, have been demanding that the Democrats actually force a shutdown, because a shutdown would still be in the hands of the Trump administration. It would undermine the Trump administration's agenda, and they would inevitably have to go back to the negotiations process and negotiate with the Democrats, and Democrats can get some assurances in this process. So basically turning around and saying, no, we're going to go forward with this continued resolution, even though we hate it, is only making you look weak and not even allowing you to fight against the awful ways in which the Trump administration is going to make cuts permanent to the federal government. Yesterday, Trump was asked if he was willing to negotiate with the Democrats, and he said yes, and they caved without asking for anything. Yes, today Trump came out and congratulated Chuck Schumer. Democrats, on the other hand, and not just people like myself, not just radical people like myself. I'm talking centrist Democrats are losing their minds right now. Centrist Democratic politicians are losing their minds. Centrist neoliberals who are famously dick riders of the Democratic Party are losing their minds. They're all finally seeing it in the way that I've been seeing it and yelling about for years. Do you understand? Because they recognize the writing on the wall and they know that this is an unacceptable way to allow the Trump administration to continue along with their agenda. The House is almost entirely united on this. The House Democratic Party and the House of Representatives almost entirely united on this. It is a select number of centrist Democratic senators who are not abiding by the Democratic wishes to resist against the Trump administration's nefarious agenda. It is crazy. The audience, the base of support, wants Chuck Schumer to fight back. Most Democrats, politicians want Chuck Schumer to fight back, and they have fought back. And yet, it is currently in the hands of a couple people, because that's all it takes. All it takes is like, what, 7 votes for them to get at least a vote on cloture, and then therefore get a majority vote from the Republican Party and basically continue with funding the government and averting a government shutdown. So there's 2 votes here, one for cloture and one for the actual bill. Democrats think that if they vote no on the actual bill, but vote yes on cloture, that they can get away with saying, well, we tried to resist, but actually what's happening here is, they still had the votes. What can we do? It is a cowardly procedural way to get out of it. A vote for cloture in this process is basically a yes vote. It does not matter. And everybody, all the losers such as ourselves who follow politics fairly closely, understand that reality. And to the average person who doesn't pay a lot of attention to what is going on, they still see the Democrats as basically caving. They don't know about the process between cloture and cloture votes and yay votes or nay votes. Anyone who thinks that there is a reason for this is absolutely out of their minds, okay? I've talked to the Podjons privately about this. I've talked to other prominent liberals about this. I've read prominent liberals and their opinions on this. There's like 4 people that still think this is adequate. There's 4 people that think that this is the appropriate thing to do. Most people, including centrists, are completely on board with, fighting against the Republican Party. And the only reason why I think they're doing that, the Dems are caving on this, is I suspect because they do not want more market volatility. And I think that they're throwing away what remains of their base of support because they just don't want to. They lost Olivia Giuliana. It's over. It's Jover. When Olivia Giuliana is shitting on Chuck Schumer for not fighting, it's over. When you lose Nate Silver, Olivia Giuliana, Neera Tanden, okay, these are people who literally get paid to defend the Democratic Party, or they will defend the Democratic Party because they demonstrate ideological zealotry towards third-way neoliberalism. The people that no matter what will defend. Will Stansel. I saw a funny tweet about this from Adam Kinzinger, who is literally a Republican, okay? A proud rhino, if you will. Felix had a very funny take on this. He was replying to Edinger Mentum here, which I thought was pretty funny. Let me find it real quick. Hold on. Yeah, here it is. Adam Kinzinger, who's a Republican who's constantly urging the Democrats to be more war hawks, more hawkish, invented television personality that does not represent a real base, a real constituency for the Democrats at all. He is just an invented television personality. That's the only thing he is. And his entire purpose is to basically say the Democrats need to be more conciliatory to the Republicans, and that's how they win the supposed moderates, right? Like that's his entire goal. And even he's saying, so let me get this straight. Gavin Newsom, desperate to platform MAGA. Chuck Schumer's de facto supporting the the continuing resolution. What's the point of an opposition party again? To which Felix replied, any shitty ostensibly left or center party can actively recruit one-time adversaries from their right in an extremely tedious display that moves 0 voters. That's the base. That is the reason as to why Adam Kinzinger is a Democrat, right? But only true masters can misread things so badly that those same conservatives go, can you guys please lib out more? It's official. We're now at a place where the Democratic Party is so uninterested in fighting back against the Republicans that their own rhinos, their own people that are supposed to be the goal that they are supposed to occupy within the Democratic media infrastructure is to tell them that they can't be radical, to tell them that they have to be more conservative to win over this like fake majority of supposed moderates out there, even though these guys have no constituency whatsoever. Even those guys are like, dude, what the are you doing? Be a little bit more radical, please. That is crazy to me. And yeah, there's more. You have, the member said that Democrats in Leesburg were so mad that even centrist Democrats were ready to write checks for AOC for Senate, adding that they have never seen people so mad. I think at this stage, the anger and resentment is not because these people are card-carrying commies. They're certainly not. They want to maintain neoliberalism foolishly and with a lot of naivete, or because it benefits their pockets, right? There are voters, petite bourgeois voters, small business owners, people that work for the State Department, yada, 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 that want to continue to a certain degree, maybe expanding marginally the social safety nets while simultaneously continuing the previous previous Democratic regime, the neoliberal regime. Even those guys understand what Trump is doing is psychotic, and they want the Dems to fight back. This current situation in front of us and the anger and resentment that people feel towards Chuck Schumer has nothing to do with ideological conviction. Many of these people who are seemingly on our side, speaking like me, they're basically about to do the classic Hasan whisper rant post DNC last night of the DNC, where I was like, you want to the Republicans, you want to be Republicans, you want to suck the Republicans. Like they're literally one step removed from doing the classic bit of just like, you love the Republicans, Democrats love Republicans, what the hell's going on? That is where we're at right now. That is where we're at. And the reason why that is where we're at is because these guys do not want to do anything. They don't want to do anything. I think that there's a select few Democrats at the tippy top that basically got their notes from Wall Street, who was just like, you have to protect the market. You don't care about protecting the people. We don't care about protecting the people. We are Wall Street. We care about protecting the market. We care about protecting corporate interests and corporate profits. You have to do what is right. And I think that is precisely what happened here. And that's the reason why Chuck Schumer and all these other people are making the worst excuses I have ever heard in my entire life. Democratic politicians are not responsive to the anger that people are exhibiting, the anger that people are experiencing. The righteous anger coming from everyone who's like, don't let the government get cut by these assholes. I don't want to lose my government job permanently. I'm scared that planes are going to keep falling out of the sky. What are we doing? There's a avian flu that's ripping through the poultry stock that exists, that's made egg prices impossible to purchase. It's hard to find eggs to begin with. And these guys are basically doing everything in their power to just make things worse. They're firing people at NOAA and the NWS. Are you joking? They're talking about no longer funding education. They wanted to abolish the Department of Education. They're pulling grants away from institutes of higher learning. Publicly funded NIH grants are the only effective way that America can maintain a competitive placement in the global marketplace in terms of finding new cures, and these guys are cutting it. Why? Because it's woke and gay. What are we doing? What the fuck are we doing? They are like picking apart the government like a bunch of vultures, okay? The carcass of the government like a bunch of vultures. They're just like taking away the scraps, what remains of these institutions that are supposed to offer you some semblance of stability as things worsen day in and day out. It's over. Chuck Schumer is done. He should never recover from this. His political career should be done going forward. Schumer broke 2 prime rules of politics for leaders. First, don't defy our own troops. More importantly, when you have the votes, as Schumer did, don't capitulate without getting something in return. It is crazy. Yeah, Weimar Andy is right. You are a collaborator at this point, okay? 10 Senate Democrats are voting to advance the House GOP 6-month funding bill. It has the votes to go through. Cortez Masto, Dick Durbin, John Fetterman, Kirsten Gillibrand, Maggie Hasan, King, Peter, Schatz, Schumer, Shaheen. These guys are going to turn around and vote no, most of them, with the exception of John Fetterman. They're going to vote no on the bill, on the passage of the bill, and act like they actually stood against it the entire time. But voting for cloture in this way is to vote for the bill. Make no mistake. It's a cowardly way to do so, but it is precisely what this is. Sorry to ask, but what are the implications of this bill passing? I want to give a summary to my centrist dad. It removes funding from key federal agencies. It gives Trump the power to command federal agencies further and direct their funding for future initiatives, whether it be to cut funding or to change like what kind of programs that they're focusing on, things of that nature. It basically is a legal defense of a lot of the Doge actions. Yeah, it takes $1 billion away from DC's budget because DC is not a state; it's a district. So there's that too. It's just like a petty vindictive agenda, but also here. What we know about the House GOP government funding bill. The bill will fully fund core federal services and maintain operations without increasing spending, according to the GOP-led House Appropriations Committee. With no poison pills or unrelated riders, the bill is simple. Extend funding and certainty for the nation, Committee Chairman Tom Cole of Oklahoma said in a statement, which is a lie. However, the measure contains some Trump administration requests, including an additional $485 million for immigration and customs enforcement to help boost deportations. The $13 billion decrease in non-defense spending, which Republicans are touting as a $13 billion in savings, would stem from the removal of projects or one-time initiatives funded by lawmakers known as earmarks in fiscal year 2024. According to a House Appropriations Committee spokesperson, the measure would not affect the money directed to those projects in the last fiscal year, but it would not repeat the funding for those same projects. No earmarks are included in the continuing resolution, the spokesperson said. The legislation would also fully fund veterans' health care and services and benefits while enhancing investments in defense, the committee touted in a press release. It noted that the bill includes the largest pay raise for junior enlisted troops in more than 40 years. This is all the Republican push, the Republican sell for what is in the bill. Democrats are taking issue with the GOP's move to fund the government through the end of the fiscal year with a continuing resolution, arguing that the package does not provide the specific funding directives for many programs and priorities that would be laid out in a negotiated full-year spending bill. This creates slush funds for the Trump administration to reshape spending priorities, eliminate longstanding programs, pick winners and losers, and more. That's what the fact sheet that Senator Patty Murray put forward. She is the ranking Democrat on the Senate Appropriations Committee. I'm going to actually, does anyone have the link to her fact sheet, the spending bill, and where Republicans are cutting from? The lack of these directives would make it harder to challenge the Trump administration's actions in court, Murray and Representative Rosa DeLauro, ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee, said in separate fact sheets. The lawmakers highlighted a variety of spending cuts contained in the continuing resolution, including slicing $185 million for defense, nuclear, non-proliferation programs, and slashing $1.4 billion from the Army Corps of Engineers construction funding used for projects to mitigate the impacts of hurricanes and floods. Plus, the legislation would reduce support for the Rural Broadband Community Connect program by $30 million, cut nearly $800 million from Veterans Affairs facility construction, eliminate up to $40 million in election security grant funding, and trim assistance to farmers to improve their lands and participate in conservation activities by $30 million, according to the Democratic appropriations leaders. Also, the package would not provide additional funds for the Federal Emergency Management Agency's Disaster Relief Fund, which would need more money before the end of the fiscal year. But considering that they want to undermine FEMA anyway, this works in their favor, the Republicans' favor. Is this 6 months or a full year? No, this pushes it back to September. From this point on, until September 30th, the Republicans have been able to successfully get this without a single battle, without any pushback whatsoever. ever. The bill also limits the District of Columbia spending to its fiscal year 2024 level for the rest of the year, obviously. So there's that aspect of it as well. So it basically slashes $1.1 billion of its approved budget from Washington, D.C., which Trump obviously hates. Separately, the package would extend community health centers funding the pandemic-era authorization, expanding in the use of telehealth and Medicare through September 30th. The legislation also would reduce some funding for the Department of Health and Human Services divisions that run community health centers and other programs that help people with mental health and substance abuse issues, said Bobby Kogan, Senior Director of the Federal Budget Policy at the left-leaning Center for American Progress. Also, money could be cut from children and family service programs as well as for aging and disability services programs. And here we are.
Pass the funding measure that the House passed earlier this week, despite growing pressure from the rest of the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party's base to block that bill. I'm back with my panel. Let's go back. We'll talk more about the government funding bill later in the show, but I have a legal panel here, so let's stick with this. Sochi, I want you to take a listen to this from President Trump.
We must be honest about the lies and abuses that have occurred within these walls. Unfortunately, in recent years, a corrupt group of hacks and radicals within the ranks of the American government obliterated the trust and goodwill built up over generations. They weaponized the vast powers of our intelligence and law enforcement agencies to try and thwart the will of the American people.
Now, you don't have to be, I know you disagree, you're shaking your head, you're going to get the mic in the sack. You don't have to be a member of MAGA to say, you know what, those Peter Strzok, Lisa Page texts were awful. There was FISA abuse. There was that weird thing with Carter Page. I don't know about that Alvin Bragg case where he basically invented a felony. You don't have to be a member of MAGA to look and say, you know what? He does have some legitimate grievances.
Oh,
here is...
Dude, throated. My throat goat, Jake Tapper. More like Jake Yapper. Holy am I watching Fox News right now? What the hell?
What I'll say even further, there is a jury in both Florida and D.C. that believe that there is enough evidence for Donald Trump to be indicted.
I mean a grand jury.
A grand jury on 44 counts. And this isn't just some conspiracy theory. There was no weaponization. Donald Trump, the federal government believes that Donald Trump committed crimes. And Jack Smith said in his report that if he...
Dude, I don't know what else to say, man. I don't... Bro, we're so cooked. We're so cooked. We're full-blown uniparty, man. What the hell? This is why I said I don't think they're going to come after. I don't think they're going to come after mainstream media. Why would they? Look at this.
I was talking about the Russiagate investigation and the Alvin Bragg case, and you deftly switched it to the Jack Smith investigations.
I was not involved in the Alvin Bragg
in the
or
other
the Russian
but I'm just saying, just for people at home, I was taking issue with some other ones, but go ahead.
Look, I was at DOJ for 17 years. I was a chief of the organized crime and gang section. I got to see a lot of the major decisions being made under 5 different attorney generals. To sit there and pretend that this was apolitical, that everything was by the book, is absurd. 4 days after the Mar-a-Lago raid, her friend, the attorney general, stood up and did an unprecedented press conference to talk about the subject of the raid. That's not something.
After it was unsealed.
That's not something.
After it was unsealed.
Let me finish. It is unethical for any prosecutor to have a press conference to talk about the fruits of a raid when the person hasn't even been charged, which was the case then. Now, Merrick
Garland.
That guy made that decision to go on air thinking, I just need to explain what we're doing.
No, unless it's in the public.
We're coming right back to
Then he hid behind Jack Smith, but Jack Smith answered to the attorney general every step of the way. Now, let me just say, grand jury, let's talk about a grand jury where the grand jurors they asked questions of Tim Parlatore 43 times.
You're talking about in Florida?
In D.C. 43 times designed to get him to invoke attorney-client privilege, which he did. He was even telling the prosecutor, this is unethical. You can't keep asking questions knowing I'm going to invoke, and she kept doing that.
Okay, Sochi, and then?
I mean, Merrick Garland is the most apolitical person, attorney general there, and he has been criticized.
I'm worried about lightning
actually by both parties. And he follows the facts and the law. He's a career Justice Department official. I can tell you there was no politicization in that investigation whatsoever. The White House was never updated about it. It was Jack Smith made the decisions, would update the attorney general. And when it came to every decision, it was Jack Smith's decision.
Tom, let me just come to you quickly. On the point I made, if I may invoke anchor privilege, the point I made about somebody in middle America saying, well, I don't know about this Jack Smith stuff, but there's other stuff that's fishy with the Russiagate investigation. I don't know about that Alvin Bragg case. What do you say to them?
Look, I would say to them, I think when Trump says that there was fishy things going on at the Justice Department, I think he has a point. There was.
What's
now,
your proof?
people
of that?
can.
I'm sorry.
People,
what is your
well,
what is your
for
evidence
example,
of that?
you had people
In the
admitting
Jack
to
Smith.
false statements on the FISA warrant. Jack Smith, when you said the case would still be going, it wasn't. It was dismissed. The document
It was dismissed, but it was under
dismissed.
appeal but it was
And the
dismissed.
fact-
It was dismissed on a technicality, which was that Jack Smith
the-
was appointed incorrectly, not on the facts.
Let's just let Tom finish here.
That's more than a technicality. But I would say that, look, I think Merrick Garland is going to go down in history as someone who, like Jim Comey, unites Republicans and Democrats in strongly disapproving of his performance. Republicans think he was too political. Democrats wonder why he waited so darn long to bring the charges against Trump.
And he canceled out that noise and did his job.
All right. Thanks, one and all. I don't think we're going to resolve any of this in this show. But thanks, one and all, for being here and for your passionate views. Appreciate it. Fighting inside the Democratic Party in full public view as the party's lawmakers fight over their strategy, if there is one, for taking on Republicans. I'm going to talk to a House Democrat if they have any solutions next. Stay with us.
This is just pure insanity.